top. Our ultimate reverence needs to go to God, not our sports team or not, the nation or anything else, but God is God. And so anyway, the How to End Christian Nationalism, it's really good. It's by Amanda Tyler, and this is being coordinated. Excuse me? Oh, okay. And yeah, an Arizona Interfaith Power and Light, the environmental group, is sponsoring this. So I think this one meets Thursday evenings, and I'll try to put something out. I think we might have already communicated some things about this group through the update, if I remember correctly, Mark. And now we're live streaming. Okay, so I can say officially, welcome to Desert Palm UCC, everyone. We're glad you're here. We always begin our service by saying, wherever you are in your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. And I believe we have one more announcement slide, or Bill Young, a dearly beloved member who passed away recently, his service is today at 1 in the afternoon over at the retirement community where he was living in Chandler. So the address is there. This went out in the update, but we just wanted to remind everybody because Bill, as I said, was a dearly beloved member. He was part of the back row boys. He was in the back there with Mark Williams and some other guys in the choir. So a great man. We want to celebrate his life. And so that's at 1 o'clock. At 3 o'clock, we'll be gathering back right here to celebrate Sonia. And this is her ecclesiastical council. So this is the almost culmination of her journey towards ordination at the ecclesiastical council. Sonia will be presenting her faith journey, showing some pictures about the different aspects of her work. This is a conference-wide event, so we'll have some of our conference staff will be here, and representatives from other congregations, and then we all take a vote on Sonia. So Sonia's been preparing for that. You could say she's been preparing her whole life for that, but in the past few weeks, months, she's really been organizing her presentation, and so that we encourage everybody to come back to support Sonia. And then afterwards, we'll have some refreshments over in Mission Hall. And lastly, Shay has a grief-related story circle small group that is coming up Thursday from 6 to 7:30. That's right here in what we call the library, that part of the room that gets partitioned off. So Shay, in my mind, is a Zen master when it comes to helping people deal with grief creatively, tell their story, and engage in healing with other people. So if that sounds interesting and you haven't heard about that, there's information out there, and Dot is also supporting Shay's work. Is Dot here? There she is. She's in the back there. So you can also talk to Dot if you're interested in doing that. All right. Anything else, Mark? We're ready. Okay. Let's enter into a time of worship.
please rise in body or spirit and join me in the call to worship? We gather as part of God's great diversity, made in their image, you and I. We sing the Creator's love song of life, sacred, deep in our hearts. We risk hope as we seek to be Christ's light, called to bold discipleship in our time. We embrace the Spirit who moves in and through us, pressing us to of love and justice. We come together to worship.
You can be seated. This will be a song response. And we've done this before, and you sing on the chorus along with me, seek and you will find. And in our lessons moving forward in our sermons up through the week before Thanksgiving Sunday, it's all about seeking different elements of our spirituality. So let's take a moment to really reflect on seeking so that the door can be opened.
O light of truth, giver of grace, you lead us to love through knowledge and faith, source of all life, O Master divine, present to us in bread and wine. Awaken our hearts, awaken our minds, open our eyes, O source of our life, to the truth from within, let the journey begin. Seek and you will find. Knock, the door will open. Look into your heart and see the truth. God is present in you. We come to this place on a quest for the truth, on a journey for home and a pathway to you. We long for your love, we long for your peace, we long for all hatred and violence to cease. Awaken our hearts, awaken our minds, open our eyes, O source of our life, to the truth from within, let the journey begin. Knowledge is the pathway to your divine love. Prayer is the answer and the key. Community binds us to the heart of each other, and service the world shall see. You are the truth that sets us free. Oh. Seek and you will find. Knock, the door will open. Look into your heart and see the truth. Oh, seek and you will find. Knock, the door will open. Look into your heart and see the truth. God is present in you. God is present in you.
Thanks, Mark. That was beautiful. Let's take a moment now to pass the peace of God to our neighbor. Peace, Andres. Peace. Like that Hot Wheels shirt.
Peace be with
Peace. I'll say to you, happy birthday.
you. Thank you. Good memory.
We're not going to sing the kids up. We're going to actually sing Stephanie up. But then, following our story time, we will sing the children out, and Catherine will take them on to Sunday school. So go ahead, Silas.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Stephanie, let me just say real quick before you jump in here. If you weren't here last week, this is something new that we're doing. I've been inviting folks to share their faith journey, a little bit about their religious experience growing up, some major influences along the way, and then how they found their way to Desert Palm. Dale went first last week. It was really awesome, and I'm a great believer in the power of story, and I think we all learn something, and we get to know each other through the sharing of our faith journey. So Stephanie graciously agreed to go next. So it's only the second time we've tried this, but I just want to say thank you. And
A good segue, because when Tom asked me if I wanted to share my story of my faith journey, I said, not after Dale. Dale, a guy who exudes spirituality, who has a degree, who talks articulately about faith, and I thought, I don't really want to have to follow him. But I was intrigued by his story last week because he talked a lot about how his mom, it was so important to her that she take her kids to a place that had a spiritual foundation, that they felt safe and had a sense of community. And I reflected on how that was kind of the opposite for me, because my faith journey began in a place where we really went out of duty and obligation and honestly some guilt. And we went to very large Catholic churches. So the sense of community was not easy to find because you were in a church with many, many people, and finding a way into a community was sort of difficult. But there was a development of faith and spirituality through the rituals that we experienced, the devotion. There was a big emphasis in the Catholic Church on the Golden Rule, the teachings of Christ. And as you know, and you've heard Tom talk about, the Catholic Church has had many people who have been social justice leaders and sacrificed themselves for social justice throughout the world. And so I had a very good sense of social justice from going to that church early on. And then my path took me here to Arizona, and I decided to keep going to church. My family had stopped going to church by then, but I'm not sure what, I think it was just that sense through the ritual and the connections to social justice. I joined the Newman Center, which really was a much smaller faith community, and so it was much easier to have a sense of community there. They also had a big emphasis on social justice. You can imagine being at a university. And another thing was that was the time when the Catholic Church had started playing contemporary Catholic music. And the music really spoke to me. We still do some of that music here at Desert Palm, and that made a real connection for me to my spiritual growth and my sense of faith. And then, as typical in the young adult years, I was floundering, where to go, how to make a connection. Mark and I tried some Catholic churches. We belonged to a Catholic church in our community, but we didn't get much of a connection, much our fault as the churches. One of the things that kept me connected, though, through all that time was my connection to spirituality and my faith through nature, and I got a lot of that from my dad. I am a lifetime suburbanite, so I don't exactly have a foundation in nature and living in nature, but I go home sometimes at Easter, and my dad, a very early riser, would say, let's go watch the sunrise. So on Easter morning, we would walk to the school that had a big open field and watch the sunrise over the eastern mountains in Southern California. Beautiful as you can imagine, and created such a deep sense of connection to me, to the earth, to God, and to my spirituality. And my dad kept that going with taking us often to the beach, where I would connect greatly with my inner feelings of a connectedness to the universe and God through watching the ocean, being there when people left and it was super quiet, the waves would calm down, and it was an overwhelming sense of being connected to the greater spirit and universe when I was there. Also from my dad, we never skip over a rising moon or a full moon. And that is something that I can go out and see and talk to my dad and talk to God all at the same time. So I'm very grateful for that foundation of connecting to my faith through nature. Eventually we found our way to DP and the UCC, and that had a lot to do with the fact that my parents had a good friend who was a UCC minister, and he ran a camp in Southern California in Yucaipa. And so when we were floundering, I got out the phone book. Yes, for you younger people, that was a thing. And I found that there was a UCC church around the corner. So I said to Mark, well, I'm going there and giving it a try. And the first time I walked in, it was story time, and John Herman had the kids up here, and he was talking to them about the importance of taking care of the earth and what the earth meant to us and how we can ground ourselves with our connection to God through the earth. And I thought, yep, that's the place for me. So then, also emulating Dale's mom, we were looking for a place to bring our kids that had a sense of community, that helped develop their sense of faith and spirituality, and we knew right away that was Desert Palm. And we are so grateful that we've had that all these years. So Mark and I are in the book study, and the first person we read, Thomas Berry, was talking about connecting with your spirituality through the universe, through social justice, and through nature. And I'm so grateful for Tom that he keeps connecting those themes for us, and that is a reason that we continue to grow our spirituality here and are in community with all of you, and we're so grateful for it.
All right, and Silas will lead us in another verse of This Little Light of Mine, and our children can go out with Catherine to Sunday school.
Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Our gospel reading today is from Matthew. Jesus spoke to them again in parables, saying, The kingdom of heaven is like a king who prepared a wedding banquet for his son. He sent the servants to those who had been invited to the banquet to tell them to come, but they refused to come. Then he sent some more servants and said, "Tell those who have been invited that I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and fattened cattle have been butchered, and everything is ready. Come to the wedding banquet." But they paid no attention and went off, one to his field, another to his business. The rest seized his servants, mistreated them, and killed them. The king was enraged. He sent his army and destroyed those murderers and burned their city. Then he said to his servants, "The wedding banquet is ready, but those I invited did not deserve to come. So go to the street corners and invite to the banquet everyone you find." So the servants went out into the streets and gathered all the people they could find. The bad as well as the good, and the wedding ball was filled with guests. But when the king came to see the guests, he noticed a man there who was not wearing wedding clothes. He asked, "How did you get in here without wedding clothes, friend?" The man was speechless. Then the king told his attendants, "Tie him hand and foot and throw him outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are invited, but few are chosen."
Thank you, Gary. Another one of those readings that leaves you all wondering, now, what is Tom going to say about that? I'm wondering that too. But I want to begin just by acknowledging that we're wrapping up, we have wrapped up our film series, which was a lot of fun. It's kind of becoming a bit of a summer tradition where each Sunday we'll relate a film to our spiritual lives, the gospel reading for that day. And you know, I do love movies so much, I find myself still thinking in relation to movies, and so I'm always tempted to invoke them. So I'm sure I'll continue to do that, but we are kicking off a new series based on John Philip Newell's book, The Great Search, Turning to Earth and Soul in the Quest for Healing and Home. Last week I mentioned that Brian McLaren has one of the blurbs on the back saying that he would add John Philip Newell himself to the list of 9 spiritual luminaries. Another blurb for those of you engaged in any kind of environmental work will recognize the name Bill McKibben. He writes, "A moving and powerful volume. We need new technologies, yes, but we also need new visions of relating to creation around us. And this book points us in wise directions." And I should just say too, you may have noticed our theme of vision today. Newell lifts up Thomas Berry, and this chapter is all about a spiritual vision. So those of you who are part of the film series know that many of the films we were talking about the world collapsing and these times of great social upheaval, unrest, political division, and you know, there's times where I doubt myself and I think, am I imagining all this? You know, I mean, you wake up in the morning, you go to Fry's, you do your grocery shopping, whatever you do, you know, you go to Starbucks, and it's like the world is continuing, right? Maybe things aren't quite so bad. And of course, you know, the tendency when things are bad, as we saw in the film Don't Look Up, is just to pretend that nothing's happening, right? Just to pretend that everything's fine. But of course, prophets down through history have tried to awaken us to what is really going on. So that is our challenge. And so, but still, you know, sometimes you wonder, well, you know, how bad is it? So that's kind of been a recurring theme in my mind. And looking at my email over here in the church office last week, I got an email about a new training that Cameron Trimble is doing Cameron was the keynote speaker at a big UCC Southwest gathering recently, or not recently, this was a couple of years ago. But she's a national thought leader in progressive theological circles. I would imagine she considers herself a public theologian because she is. This is the description of the training that's coming up with Cameron. It's online in October. The description says, "We are living through the unraveling of many old stories about who we are, why we're here, and how we are meant to live together on this earth. As these inherited narratives collapse under the weight of climate crisis, social fragmentation, and spiritual disconnection, the question becomes clear: what story will guide us now?" So this is what Cameron is doing. And the last line in that description of the event says, "This is not about easy answers or quick fixes. It's an invitation into the deep work of reimagining together what comes next." Where do we go from here? One of the big reasons I think Newell begins with Thomas Berry is because Thomas Berry's chief insight was that religious traditions tend to take the complexity, the vastness, the depth and mystery and say, here's the truth, and kind of package it. And it's one way for all time. But Berry realized that the accumulated wisdom of the world religions are pointing us to an unfolding mystery that is the cosmos, and that the world religions themselves, at their best, are hands pointing at this unfolding mystery. So that is the paradigm shift that Berry is inviting us to embrace. Since I'm going to be talking a little bit about Thomas Berry this morning, I just wanted to give you all a sense of who he is if you're hearing his name for the first time. His masterpiece, in my estimation, he's written a few beautiful books, many amazing articles and essays, but the great work, I think, is his masterpiece. And in this book, about the author section, it identifies Berry as someone who comes from the hill country of the southern Appalachians, where he was born at the beginning of the First World War. In 1943, he entered a monastery. He was a Catholic priest. He received his doctoral degree in Western Cultural History at the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. in 1948. In that same year, so 1948, he traveled to China to study the Chinese language, culture, and religion. So he lived in China. Then when Mao came to power, he returned to the U.S. to continue his Chinese studies and to begin to study Sanskrit and the religions of India. This is a Catholic priest, a scholar of world religions. You start to get the feel for Berry's global, we could say planetary sensibility. He went on after these experiences to become the director of a graduate program in the history of religions at Fordham University, and he founded the Riverdale Center for Religious Research in upstate New York. That center's major concern was to clarify the role of the human community within the earth community and the universe itself. So he's asking really big, profound questions about why we are here and what is our place here. For progressive religious folks, it's helpful and I think important to recognize too that some of Berry's students went on to found the study of religion and ecology at Yale University, which is a treasure trove of wisdom and deep insights into the nature of religious experience as it relates to ecology and the environment. Brian Swim is a cosmologist who's worked closely with Berry together they wrote a book that I read on my sabbatical. It's called The Story of the Universe. And when Cameron says, we're trying to look at what is the new story, as Barry understood it, the new story is the story of the universe. And he and Brian Swim, this cosmologist, wrote this book called The Story of the Universe. And it's not an easy read, but it's quite fascinating. And it's the history of the cosmos and all of its major transformations, the events that lead up to this moment, to where we find ourselves now. This is a bit of an aside, but one of the critical moments in that journey, as you can imagine, is when our distant ancestors left the ocean, right, to come onto the land. That was a critical development in the evolution of humanity, of course, right? So it's so funny, Barry talks about that really profoundly as this moment of just cosmic significance. And the other day, I don't know if it was in the New Yorker or what, but I saw this cartoon where, sure enough, there's a fish emerging from the water, walking on its fins away from the water, and there's another fish in the water saying, "Don't walk away when I'm talking to you." So now we know how that moment in evolutionary history took place. But Brian Swim, that cosmologist who realized that Barry was a genius and a mystic and a prophet and someone that he was going to devote the rest of his life to advancing his ideas. Swim was younger. He says about Barry that Barry was a person in the very midst of giving birth to a new order of human being and a new planetary mode of being. So we're talking about religious revelation at its most foundational, its most profound sense. I just want to tell you a little story about how I discovered Thomas Berry. I was just beginning my career as a minister, so I think of this as a God thing. I had gone to Union. I was serving a church as an associate pastor in New Jersey, Summit, New Jersey. And I'll never forget this moment because it changed my life dramatically. A friend of mine from Union had given me a box of books. He's like, "I'm going to go work for Habitat for Humanity, so I don't need all these theology books anymore." So he gave me his books, and so I was sitting there and I reached in this pile of books and I just grabbed one randomly. And it was this very book, which now is like falling apart. Anybody knows about book repair, I'd like to talk to you. Need some special tape for this. But, okay, good. Thank you, Alice. And sure enough, it's The Great Work by Thomas Berry. And that was 20 years ago. And it changed my life. Because Thomas Berry at heart was a teacher, he founded that Riverdale Center for the Study of Religion, and he had a community of followers who are now changing the world and continuing to birth his vision. And because he was a teacher, when you read him, one thing that's so helpful is as brilliant and vast as his mind is, his sense of this planetary emerging consciousness, the appearance of humanity and the evolution of the cosmos, he breaks things down into these 4 points or these 3 points. He's doing that constantly. For example, he says that ultimately the great work, this is the argument of his masterpiece, is that the great work of humanity at this moment in history is to transform our relationship to the earth in relation to the university, the legal system, the political system, and the religious system. So he lays things out in very helpful ways like that, and then he talks about what does that really look like? How do we begin to do this? The thing, of all the different things that we could lift up about Thomas Berry, I want to focus on what he says are the 4 sources of wisdom that can help us engage in this challenge of birthing the new story and blending our lives with it. So this is the future of religion as Berry understands it, the future of spirituality, the future of the earth, we could say, of life on the earth. he points to 4 sources of wisdom. He says, women, I'm broadening that to the feminine, in this day and age with all that we're learning about gender, I want to broaden that. But the wisdom of the feminine, the wisdom of indigenous peoples, the wisdom of what he calls the classical tradition, which sounds narrow but is actually very broad, is an accumulation of human learning throughout history, and then science. So these are the 4 sources of wisdom. About the wisdom of women, he says, women are revealing Western civilization to itself. He says, without the newly assertive consciousness of women, Western civilization might have continued indefinitely on its destructive path without ever coming to the realization of just what has been happening in the exclusion of women from full participation in the human project. So he's for full participation of women, and not just that, right? Not just giving women the right to vote, but saying, women, what do you have to tell us about the foundational importance of relationship in relation to where we find ourselves on this planet, in society, with children and multi-generational families? What is the feminine insight into that? So he says we need to listen to the wisdom of the feminine. Then he talks about indigenous people, and we've talked about this before. I don't need to belabor the point. But obviously, a great tragedy in the history of humanity is when Europeans first arrived in North America and viewed the indigenous peoples as savages and went about killing them, right? Committing genocide. Barry says, okay, now we're at a point where we can begin to recognize that indigenous people have tremendous wisdom, especially in this time of ecological crisis. Barry writes, in more recent times, we have come to know the way of life of the indigenous peoples of the world in more extensive detail. We actually know something about indigenous people now, a little bit. And yet somehow, he says, we remain estranged from the deeper realms of their consciousness. But as the years pass, we have begun to recognize both how little we really understand these people and how much we need their wisdom. About the classical period. Again, that sounds very narrow. It sounds like he's talking about the Greeks and Romans, but really, he's talking about the birth of civilization, the birth of cultures, the birth of history, recorded history as we know it, and the accumulation of knowledge and the way that flowed into the universities. The golden age of Spain, when Jews, Christians, and Muslims briefly were sharing their knowledge and their insight into the mystery of existence. And the one thing that emerges from Barry that you just don't get anywhere else is that something is emerging from the world's religions. He really has this deep and profound understanding of how we emerged from the earth. And so the religions themselves, Christianity, Judaism, Taoism, Buddhism, Islam, all of them emerged from the earth as well. And remember, he went to China, and then he learned Sanskrit, and he studied the religions of India. And so when he writes, he's drawing from all these different sources. He writes, among the accomplishments of human beings on this planet, we find the rock-hewn temples of India, the shrines and carving of Angkor Wat in Cambodia. I had to look some of these things up just to see these architectural wonders that he's talking about. There's the great stupa in Indonesia, the pyramids of Egypt, and the Mayan and Aztec peoples in Mesoamerica. And when you go and look at these stone ruins, one of the things that you see is human faces in the stone. And you understand that what Barry is saying is that we are waking up on this planet. We are a newly arrived species. The world religions themselves are the first step of the emergence of human consciousness on the planet. The overall beauty of what Barry, of his vision, and this is why Newell lifts him up, is this realization that all life from the very beginning has been blossoming with purposeful transformation. He quotes a physicist, I meant to look up the name, but I'll have to go back, but this physicist said, it's as if the universe knew we were coming. That's how purposeful and intimate and intricate everything is that has led up to this moment. Barry is saying that process is sacred. That begins in eternity, and we are a piece of that wonderful tapestry. In this way of thinking, and I hope this provides a modicum of hope, even as it feels like everything is unraveling. In this way of thinking, no matter what happens, we know that the universe got to the point where it could stand back and look at itself through us. We can go to the Grand Canyon. Most of us have. We have stood there and gazed at the mystery. Barry is saying this is why we are here. In religious language, it's to give praise, to praise the Creator. Barry is weaving in science to say, yes, the universe desired to reflect back on itself. We have been able to behold the beauty of a sunrise or a sunset, the rhythmic pounding of the surf against the shore. These are deep and ancient things, and the universe has called us forth to see them, to hear them, to be present. This is why the poetry of Rilke is so beautiful, because he recognized why we're here is just to sing praise, to be here and to recognize the majesty of it all. What Barry is saying is, once we really begin to wrap our brains around this, we begin to ask different kinds of questions. Where would evolution like to go? And how can we help it? So different than the kinds of questions that we're asking today on a daily basis. We've become so blinded by despair, both on the right and on the left, right? It's as if we've all become that religious fanatic who's holding a sign, the end is near. We can't imagine getting beyond this point, right? But Barry is there whispering us like a prompter beneath the stage, saying, you are each part of a vast and amazing universe called forth by a supreme being that we haven't begun to understand. That there is love and compassion flowing from the source of that mystery. Last week we had the story of Jesus and the woman at the well, and he says to her, if you knew the water that I was offering you, you would know that this is the kind of water that when you sip this water, you never thirst again. It's because you have, at that moment, become in touch with the sacred source, the very wellspring of existence itself. Barry's work, and I think this is important and needs to be said, another profound aspect of Barry's thought is that catastrophic times of collapse are nothing new in the history of the universe. If we take a cosmic view of things, we can recognize, when you read Barry's The Story of the Universe, it is, it rained for like 10,000 years on the planet. All the lava and destruction, the Big Bang itself, the formation and death of generations of stars. I mean, there is huge catastrophes there. So whatever we are experiencing now as unrest and catastrophe can also be seeds of new growth. So there is reason for hope when we take this big picture. Barry says this, in the immense story of the universe, that so many of these dangerous moments have been navigated successfully is an indication that the universe is for us rather than against us. We need only summon these forces of support in order to succeed. He's saying we have to have faith. I mean, it was Einstein, I think, who said ultimately the biggest question is, can we trust the universe? And Barry's saying, yes, we can trust it because it flows from God. Just have a few more Barry quotes. This guy changed my life. I want to give him credit where credit is due. He says this, and he died not that long ago. He says, we are now experiencing a moment of significance far beyond what any of us can imagine. It is the foundation of a new historical period in every realm of human affairs. He says the distorted dream of an industrial technological paradise is being replaced by the more viable dream of mutually enhancing human presence within an ever-renewing Earth community. I had a little bit, I'm going to skip over where he talks about when you look at the world of religions, you see the evolution of compassion in all of them. And he gleans that wisdom as a Catholic priest before he even gets to Christianity, and he talks a little bit about St. Francis and his love of creation. I want to close with this idea that the gist of what Barry is saying, I think, fits well with what you all have heard me say, but I want to say it again. I think it bears repeating. That Joanna Macy, and of course she was deeply influenced by Eastern religion and loved Barry as well. She recently passed away. Remember, Joanna Macy talks about 3 major ways of framing the moment that we're in. One of them being business as usual, right? Everything's fine. We don't have to worry about the environment. We don't have to worry about anything that's happening in the political realm of life, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just, continue on, right? That's business as usual. She says the other way of framing everything is to say, is the great unraveling. And it's easy to get trapped there, right? Because that's where we just go through the litany of ecological collapse, the signs of fascism, anti-immigrant, xenophobia, yada, 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 yada. We go through the long list, and really there's this sense of collapse right now, I think, because we are in the midst of the collapse of traditional worldviews that are no longer working. And so she's saying that's one way of understanding reality right now, is to say everything is falling apart. Reminds us of that poem, can the center hold? But the third way that Joanna Macy talks about, that I think fits with what Thomas Berry is saying so beautifully. The third way is what Joanna Macy calls the great turning. That's after you experience the pain of collapse. You recognize, yes, there are serious problems in the world right now. We can't even talk to our more conservative family members in our own families. Something is wrong, right? We know that. It's a tense time. It's a scary time. But Joanna Macy's idea, and I love it and I agree with it, I'm going to devote my life to this, is that when we open ourselves up to the pain of what is really happening in the world, and that can be personal grief, that can be big picture stuff. When we open ourselves up to the pain, we feel our connection with each other, with God, with the natural world. Then we become part of this third way of framing reality right now, which she calls the great turning. That is the movement of all people who are awakening to this great mystery in which we find ourselves, who say, I see the ultimate goodness of what is, and I want to be part of it. That's the invitation. The story about the king who says, the guest didn't come. And there's some problematic aspects of that passage, of course, where the king kills everybody who doesn't come. You got to watch out for kings. But the larger story is that the invitation was put out. Not everybody responded. This is the nature of the spiritual life. We can't all integrate the profundity of the universe in a single moment. I mean, I've read Barry's great work like 10 times, and every time I go on a trip, I take it with me. What one book do I want to take? I'm going to read it again. This stuff takes time. But the invitation has been sent. So that you each have to ask yourself, do I dare show up at this banquet that is life itself? You're all invited. May it be. Come on.
In gratitude for all we have received, we offer our lives back to God. We share our time, our skills, our money, and in so doing, we say yes to God's invitation to join in their kingdom building here on work on earth. Let us take our morning offering.
Be thou my vision, O Lord of my heart, not be all else to me, save that thou art. Thou my best Lord, by day or by night, waking or sleeping, thy presence, my life. Be thou my wisdom, and thou my true word. I ever with thee, and thou with me, Lord. Thou my great Father, and I thy true Son. Thou in me dwelling, and I with thee one. I will lift up my eyes to my help and my strength, till my faith becomes sight, be the light guiding me. Riches I heed not, nor men's empty praise. Thou mine inheritance, now and always. Thou and thou only, first in my heart. I, King of heaven, my treasure thou art. I will lift up my eyes to my help and my strength, till my faith becomes sight, be the light guiding me. King of heaven, my victory won. May I reach heaven's joys, oh bright heaven's sun. Heart of my own heart, whatever befall, still be my vision, oh ruler of all.
Please join me in the unison prayer. God of love, we see terror and conflict, destruction and death. There is no end in sight. You know what we seek, loving God, peace and justice for our world. You call us to support the peace bringers with words of encouragement. You call us to name the evildoers and clearly show their intent. You call us to protect the vulnerable and be their friends. You call us to confront the powerful and support the persecuted. Your words tell us to protect the environment of planet Earth, and this rings true for us. Your words tell us enough food for every child, and we will help it happen. Terror and conflict, injustice and despair are alien to you, loving God. We are with you, and it will not just be words. We will act to bring change, change that is so desperately needed. Amen.
And Silas will lead us first in a moment of introspection, our song, Amazing Grace. So here we go, Silas.
My own, Mark, there we go, yeah. Just give a reminder that we're having a special coffee hour celebrating Jim's birthday, so please join us over there for cake and coffee. For our benediction, I mentioned Rilke. I just happen to have a Rilke poem here. I want to use this as our benediction. This is to each of you. You are not surprised at the force of the storm. You have seen it growing. The trees flee, their flight sets the boulevards streaming. But you know the one they flee is the one you move toward. Let's journey deeper into that heart of mystery. Amen. We're going to do our song benediction now. We'll sing through Holly Holly a couple of times.
Thank you, Silas.